Integrating O365 with Identity as a Service. To fully integrate IDaaS with O365, you must create two custom user attributes. From the hamburger menu, select Members, Attributes. In the Custom User Attributes, click Add to add a new attribute. Add the attribute O365 UPN. This attribute will contain the user principal name required by O365. Also, add the O365 Immutable ID attribute. The new attributes are shown in the list. Optionally, you can map the O365 Immutable ID attribute to the directory object GUID if you want to use Identity as a Service Active Directory synchronization. To do this, we go to the Resources Directories. In the Directories list, select a directory to add to the mapping. Scroll down to the Custom Attribute section and notice the two attributes you just added. Enter Object GUID into the Immutable ID attribute field and the changes are saved. The Object GUID value will now automatically appear as a user's Immutable ID attribute value. Now you will need to be sure your O365 is prepared for configuration. First, using PowerShell, set up and federate the O365 domain with Identity as a Service. Once we have the setup done, and we have a metadata file, we can define the O365 application in Identity as a Service. Click the plus to add an application. Scroll down to the SAML Cloud Integrations to the Office 365 tile, and click the O365 tile. Provide a meaningful name and description. Notice there's a link to the integration guide, which can provide additional detail of this process and other integrations. If available from your setup in the O365 application, upload the metadata XML file to auto-populate the fields. The metadata file must contain the following: customer service URL, service provider entity ID, single logout, service URL, SAML signing certificate, SAML name ID encoding format, and SAML signature algorithm. From the SAML name ID attribute drop-down list, select the user attribute that represents the immutable ID. For example, O365 Immutable ID that we created earlier. Select SAML signing certificate from those available. Signing is enabled. If you also want to enable encryption of the SAML assertion, you will require an encryption certificate. Select Enable Active Sync to allow users to access other desktop and mobile Microsoft Office 365 applications through Identity as a Service authentication. If you are using ActiveSync, click to copy the active logon URIs because it is only visible when configuring the Microsoft application. You will need to paste the active logon URI value as part of the final PowerShell command. Note, you can regenerate a new account logon URI value. If you regenerate the value, then you must also reconfigure the O365 account using PowerShell to include the newly generated partner secret. From the Office 365 SAML attribute value drop-down list, select O365 user principal name. As Identity as a Service account that is synchronized with the corporate directory containing user principal name values, it will auto-populate the user principal name and the user profile information when the directory synchronization occurs. If the user principal name is not populated by directory synchronization, you must populate the user's user principal name system attribute manually for every user integrated with Office 365. Click Submit to save the application. Next, the resource rule for access to Office O365 will be defined. In our case, for all users. Also in our case, we will not apply any risk factors or relative risk for this rule. For the authentication decision section, we will skip the password and require a one-time password only for our low risk and deny access for the other risk levels. The resource rule can now be saved. Now our new application is listed with the resource rule. Remember, you can disable a rule using the disable icon. Back in the application listing, select the cloud or the three dots to download the SAML metadata file for use with your O365 integration. Choose the SAML certificate to include, ensuring it is the same one we identified earlier in the application setup. Wait for the download to complete. We must add user accounts in O365 and Identity as a Service so that the single sign-on attempts from Microsoft Office 365 to IDaaS are successful. Ensure you create an immutable ID for each user that does not have one. You can add users in the following ways. Add users one at a time, add users through external directory synchronization, which is preferred, add users using PowerShell. Once you have your O365 users listed, we are ready to add the users now to Identity as a Service. You can do this through your Active Directory synchronization, bulk import, or adding users individually. Lastly, the O365 Federation can be set up using PowerShell. Please refer to the Technical Integration Guide for the complete details on the O365 side. And remember, ensure the domain to be federated is not the default domain in Microsoft Office. And that you break any existing federation before defining the federation with IDaaS. To test the access, let's see the application now available from the user's application list. From the menu, select My Account, select the new O365 tile. As we are logged in already, we are immediately sent to O365 bypassing any authentication. When integrated with Identity as a Service, Microsoft O365 accounts are configured for single logout, SLO. The user is not logged out of other SAML applications by logging out of Microsoft Office 365. And logging out of Identity as a Service account does not log the user out of their Microsoft O365 account. So if we log out of O365, we should be asked to log in again if we try to access an O365 application directly and not from the IDaaS menu. We are first asked for the password, then asked for the one-time password, and now we can access the applications. Please see our library of support content or contact our world-class support team any time of the day, no matter where you are, for more immediate assistance.